This is Duke University.
You know those fool Yankees actually won a war? We'll show them.
Fiddly-dee. War, war, war. This war talk spoiling all the fun at every party this spring. I get so bored I could scream.
If you think about the Scarlet image, it's all about wealth and privilege, and those were actually just a very few of the women in the South. And most of the women in the South, they were poor. Even women who were on relatively prosperous farms, we would consider them, if we walked by their houses today, we would think, oh, poor, because the houses were small, they had very modest lifestyles, and they worked hard. So here we are at the Duke Homestead, and this is where Washington Duke and his family lived. Apparently they moved here around the 1850s. This is really much more typical of Southern houses than something like Tara's. And this is actually really nice compared to where most Southerners live. This house was occupied until the 1930s. But there's no central air, there's no heat, there's nothing like that. The only ventilation is here is through windows. And in the early 19th century, many of these houses would not have even had glass windows. That would have been something that was a luxury. Most of the women worked in the field. So when you need to bring in a harvest, everybody's got to pitch in. And nobody cared if women were women and wearing skirts, they needed to pitch in as well. One of the women that I know a lot about, who I found a lot of information about, Sarah Guttery, lived in Alabama, who had an illegitimate son, and so therefore had to support him herself. She lived with her family at home with them, and what she did to pay her way was do field work. So she worked in her father's farm, and then she also later on in her life worked as a paid field worker. Her son grew up, he went into the army, and ultimately he was killed. And when he's killed, her whole life falls apart. She goes from being somebody who is in a family which is making it, and she's getting by partly because of the labor of her son, and then all of a sudden she doesn't have that support anymore, and she basically slips over into absolute destitution. To think that somehow the Civil War was apart from women's lives, that women were only involved in balls and teas and parties and dresses, is to miss the ways that even the most elite women in Southern society could not escape the effects of the war. The war happened in their backyard. It happened on their farms, on their plantations, in their lives.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.